Ladies and gentlemen, look, life is suffering. You don't get to escape that. You don't get to walk through the world without facing obstacles, without encountering moments of despair, without wrestling with your own inadequacies. But here's the thing. You don't need an easier life. You need to become a stronger person. And that starts with belief. Now, belief isn't some passive thing. It's not sitting in your room and hoping the world will recognize your value. Now, that's not belief. That's delusion. Real belief in yourself is earned. It's forged through discipline, through action, through sacrifice. You act as though you're someone who can be relied upon. You speak the truth even when it's inconvenient. You wake up and you carry the burden and you do it again tomorrow. And over time you start to realize you're actually someone worth believing in. But there's a catch. You have to be consistent. You have to stop negotiating with your weaker self. You have to decide that what you're aiming for actually matters. Because let's be clear, every moment you waste is a moment you'll never get back. And you know this, you feel it. That quiet voice in your head, it's always telling you what you should be doing. The question is, are you listening? Or are you distracting yourself with cheap entertainment, with momentary pleasures, with resentment and self-pity? You want to be something more? You want to be the kind of person who can stand up straight with their shoulders back and look the world in the eye? Then prove it every single day, because there's no alternative. If you don't stay consistent, if you don't believe in yourself through action, then you already know what happens. You stay weak, you stay bitter, and you stay exactly where you are. So the choice is yours, and it's a real choice. You either believe in yourself enough to put in the work, to sacrifice what is unworthy, to transform into someone who can handle life, or you don't. And if you don't, then you'll pay for it, because life will demand a price either way. The only question is whether you'll pay it willingly as someone striving forward, or whether it'll be extracted from you in suffering and regret. Belief in yourself isn't something you're born with. It's not something you magically wake up one day possessing, nor is it something that can be handed to you by others. It has to be earned, and the only way to earn it is through discipline, through action, and through sacrifice. You don't get to just decide that you're competent, that you're strong, that you're worthy of trust. No, you have to prove it, first to yourself and then to the world. You see, people have this notion that confidence is some sort of mindset, that if they just think positively enough, they'll somehow develop belief in themselves. But that's not how it works. Real confidence, the kind that can withstand setbacks, that can endure hardship, that can carry you through chaos, that kind of confidence is built on something solid. It comes from knowing deep down that you have put in the work, that you have disciplined yourself, that you have done difficult things over and over again until you became someone capable of facing life's challenges head on. And discipline is where it starts. Because without discipline, you have nothing. Without discipline, you're at the mercy of your emotions, your impulses, and your excuses. You say you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. You promise yourself you'll change, but you never do. And deep down, you know it. That's why you don't believe in yourself. Because you've given yourself no reason to. You've broken your own trust too many times. You've made commitments and abandoned them. You've set goals and walked away when they became inconvenient. And that chips away at you. It makes you weaker. It teaches your own mind that your words mean nothing. So if you want to believe in yourself, you need to start small. Pick something, anything that you can do every day, and then do it, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because that's the test. That's the moment where discipline is either built or destroyed. When you push through discomfort, when you act despite your resistance, you're sending yourself a message. I am someone who follows through. And if you do that enough times, eventually it stops being a question. Eventually it becomes who you are. But discipline alone isn't enough. You need action. It's not enough to simply have good intentions. You have to actually do something. You have to get up and move forward. You have to take risks. You have to face your fears. Because belief in yourself isn't just about keeping promises to yourself. It's about proving that you're capable. And you can't do that sitting still. You can't do that hiding from the world, waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, the absolute certainty that you won't fail. No, you need to act before you feel ready. You need to put yourself in situations where you don't know what you're doing, where you're forced to learn, to adapt, to struggle. And yes, you will fail, you will make mistakes, you will embarrass yourself. That's inevitable. But every time you get back up, every time you take another step, every time you refuse to let failure define you, you're reinforcing something crucial, the belief that you can handle whatever comes. And that's where real self-belief comes from. Not from avoiding failure, but from proving to yourself that failure isn't the end. And then there's sacrifice. Because if you're going to build belief in yourself, you have to be willing to give things up. You can't hold on to everything and expect to grow. You can't cling to comfort, to bad habits, to destructive relationships, to old versions of yourself that no longer serve you. Growth requires letting go. It requires cutting away the things that keep you weak, that keep you small, that keep you from stepping into who you're meant to be. And that's hard, because sacrifice hurts. It means walking away from the easy path. It means making choices that most people aren't willing to make, but that's the price of belief. You don't get to be confident, to be strong, to trust yourself, unless you're willing to give up the things that are keeping you from it. That's the trade. That's the exchange. You trade your excuses for discipline. You trade your inaction for movement. You trade your comfort for growth. And in return, you become someone you can believe in. Consistency is what separates those who succeed from those who remain stuck. It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's not luck. Though those things can help, but without consistency, none of them matter. Because the truth is, anyone can work hard for a day. Anyone can feel motivated and put in effort when things are exciting, when the novelty hasn't worn off, when they still believe that results will come quickly. But what happens when motivation fades? What happens when the work becomes mundane, when progress slows, when the excitement turns into routine? That's where most people give up. That's where most people decide it's too hard, too slow, too uncertain. And that's exactly why most people never achieve what they want. Because consistency isn't about what you do when you feel like it. It's about what you do when you don't. It's about whether you can keep moving forward even when progress is invisible. Even when no one is watching, even when it feels like nothing is changing. That's the test. And the people who pass it, they're the ones who build something meaningful. They're the ones who look back years later and realize that every small, repetitive, seemingly insignificant action they took added up to something extraordinary. But the problem is, most people don't think like that. They expect results to come quickly. They expect dramatic transformations, overnight success, instant validation. And when that doesn't happen, they lose faith. They assume they're on the wrong path. They jump from one thing to another, always chasing the next best strategy, the next quick fix, the next shortcut that promises faster results with less effort. But there are no shortcuts. There never have been, there never will be. And the people who understand that, the people who are willing to put in the work day after day, year after year, without guarantees, without excuses, those are the people who win. And here's something people don't like to admit. Inconsistency is a form of self-sabotage. It's how you keep yourself weak. It's how you avoid responsibility for your own potential. Because if you're inconsistent, if you never fully commit, if you keep stopping and starting, then you always have an excuse. You can always say, well, I didn't really try. And that's comforting, isn't it? Because if you never really try, then you never really fail. You never have to face the reality that maybe you're not as capable as you think. Maybe success isn't as easy as you hoped. Maybe becoming who you want to be is going to demand more from you than you ever imagined. And that's terrifying. So people stay inconsistent. They tell themselves they'll start again next week. They convince themselves they need better conditions, more time, more motivation. But those are just lies. Because if you really wanted it, you'd show up. If you really believed in what you were doing, you wouldn't keep quitting. You wouldn't keep waiting for a perfect moment that will never come. You'd just do the work every single day, no matter what, because that's the only way forward. And this isn't just about success. This is about who you are. Because every time you stay consistent, every time you push through when you don't feel like it, every time you show up despite every excuse in your mind telling you not to, you're shaping yourself. You're proving to yourself that you are someone who can be relied upon. And that changes everything, because once you know that about yourself, once you've built that identity, you carry it into everything you do. You stop questioning whether you're capable, whether you're disciplined, whether you have what it takes, because you've already proven it. But the opposite is also true. Every time you break your commitments, every time you let yourself off the hook, every time you allow inconsistency to take over, you weaken yourself. You teach yourself that your word means nothing, that you can't be trusted, that when things get difficult, you quit. And that kind of thinking, it follows you. It infects every part of your life. It makes you smaller. It keeps you from ever stepping fully into your potential. And worst of all, it makes you doubt yourself, because deep down you know. You know whether or not you've been consistent. You know whether or not you've done the work. And if you haven't, no amount of external validation, no amount of motivational speeches, no amount of temporary enthusiasm will ever make you believe in yourself. So if you want to change, if you want to become someone you respect, if you want to build something real, there's only one option: show up every day, no matter what. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because consistency isn't just about reaching a goal, it's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't quit. And once you become that person, everything else falls into place. Ignoring your responsibilities doesn't just keep you from success, it makes you weak. And weakness isn't just about physical strength or intelligence, it's about the way you face the world. It's about whether you take control of your life or whether you let life control you. When you refuse to take responsibility for the things that matter, when you avoid the hard choices, when you push away the discomfort of discipline, you set yourself up for failure. Not just small failures, but deep, soul-crushing regret. The kind that builds up over years, the kind that makes you wake up one day and wonder where all your time went, why you never became the person you wanted to be. People convince themselves that avoiding responsibility is freedom, that if they don't commit to anything, if they don't hold themselves accountable, if they don't take life seriously, then they won't have to deal with stress or pressure or expectation. But that's a lie, because the moment you stop taking responsibility, you don't become free. You become a slave to your own weaknesses. You become controlled by your impulses, by your emotions, by your fears. You wake up late, you procrastinate, you waste time. And then you wonder why nothing in your life is improving. You wonder why you feel stuck, why you feel anxious, why nothing ever seems to change. And the worst part is, you know the truth. Deep down, you know when you're avoiding responsibility. You know when you're taking the easy way out. And every time you do, it chips away at you. It makes you smaller. It makes you doubt yourself. Because you can't lie to yourself forever. You can distract yourself with entertainment, with pleasure, with meaningless activities, but eventually reality catches up. And when it does, it won't be kind. It will hit you with the weight of everything you neglected, everything you ignored, everything you failed to do when you had the chance. And that's when regret sets in. Regret is one of the most painful things a person can experience, because it isn't just about what you did. It's about what you didn't do. It's about the opportunities you wasted, the people you let down, the potential you never lived up to. And once regret takes hold, it's hard to shake. You can't go back in time and fix the choices you didn't make. You can't undo years of procrastination, years of avoidance, years of convincing yourself that responsibility didn't matter. All you can do is live with it, and most people do. Most people carry their regrets like a weight on their back, like a constant reminder of everything they failed to do. And that kind of burden, it doesn't just go away, it follows you everywhere. But the worst part of avoiding responsibility isn't just the regret, it's what it does to your character. Because when you refuse to take control of your life, you become bitter. You start blaming everything and everyone else for your problems. You convince yourself that the world is unfair, that other people had it easier, that success is just a matter of luck. And that bitterness, it eats away at you. It makes you resentful. It makes you envious of those who actually put in the work, who actually faced their struggles head on, who actually took responsibility when you refused to. And that resentment doesn't just stay inside you, it seeps into everything. It ruins your relationships. It makes you angry. It makes you hate the very people who prove that you could have done more, that you could have been more. And once you fall into that mindset, it's incredibly hard to escape, because admitting the truth, that you are the reason for your own failures, is painful. It requires humility, It requires looking in the mirror and accepting that your problems aren't someone else's fault, that your life is the result of your own choices, that if you want things to change, you are the one who has to change. And most people won't do that. Most people will cling to their excuses, to their self-pity, to their endless justifications for why they never took responsibility, because that's easier, that's safer, but it's also the path to misery. If you ignore responsibility long enough, life will eventually force it upon you. The consequences of your inaction will catch up, and by the time they do, you won't be prepared. You won't have the strength to handle them. You won't have the resilience, the discipline, the competence to overcome them. And that's when life becomes unbearable. That's when people spiral into hopelessness, into self-destruction, into a place where they feel completely powerless. But the truth is, they were never powerless. They just refused to act when they had the chance. And that's the tragedy of avoiding responsibility. It doesn't just lead to failure, it leads to a life you don't respect, a life that feels empty, a life where you know you could have done more but you didn't, and no one else will fix that for you. No one else will carry that burden. It's yours alone, and it always has been. Life will demand a price from you whether you like it or not. That's not up for debate. The only real choice you have is whether you'll pay that price willingly through discipline, effort, and sacrifice, or whether it will be extracted from you through suffering, regret, and failure. Because nothing comes for free. Every action you take, every decision you make, every habit you form is shaping your future, whether you're aware of it or not. And if you refuse to put in the work now, if you avoid responsibility, if you keep making excuses, then life will eventually hit you with the consequences. And when that happens, it won't be gentle. People think they can cheat the system. They think they can avoid hardship by taking the easy road, by choosing comfort over growth, by ignoring the things they know they should be doing. But the truth is, avoiding hard things doesn't make them go away, it just postpones the inevitable. And the longer you delay, the worse it gets. You can avoid working on your health, but eventually your body will break down. You can avoid developing discipline, but eventually you'll face a challenge you're completely unprepared for. You can avoid responsibility, but eventually life will force it on you in ways you can't escape. Everything has a cost. If you want success, you have to pay for it with effort. If you want respect, you have to pay for it with integrity. If you want confidence, you have to pay for it with consistent action. There is no shortcut. There is no way around it. And the people who refuse to accept this reality are the ones who suffer the most, because life does not reward avoidance. It punishes it. Look at the people who are miserable, who are filled with resentment, who are drowning in regret. Did they get there by accident? No. They got there because, at some point, they refused to pay the price of discipline. They chose comfort over growth. They ignored the warning signs. And now they're paying the price anyway, but in a far worse way, through regret, through bitterness, through a deep sense of knowing that they could have been more, that they could have done more, but they didn't. And that's the choice you have to make. Do you want to suffer now, voluntarily, through hard work, through sacrifice, through discipline? Or do you want to suffer later, when the consequences of inaction catch up to you? Because they will. Time doesn't stop. Every day that passes is either a day that you built something meaningful or a day that you wasted. And eventually those days add up. Eventually you either look back with pride, knowing that you did everything you could to become the person you were meant to be, or you look back with regret, knowing that you let time slip through your fingers while you made excuses. And the thing is, deep down, you already know this. You know that nothing worth having comes easily. You know that growth requires sacrifice. You know that the people who succeed in life aren't the ones who found a secret shortcut. They're the ones who were willing to do what others wouldn't. And if you're honest with yourself, you know that every time you avoid hard work, every time you procrastinate, every time you choose distraction over discipline, you're making your future harder. You're choosing suffering, just in a delayed form. There's nothing more painful than wasted potential, nothing more crushing than realizing that you could have done something great, but you didn't. And once that time is gone, you don't get it back. No amount of wishing, no amount of regret, no amount of self-pity will reverse the years you wasted. That's why this choice is so important. That's why you have to wake up and take it seriously. because every decision you make right now is either moving you forward or holding you back. Every habit you build is either making you stronger or making you weaker. And if you don't take control of that process, if you don't make the sacrifices now, then life will force them on you later in ways you won't be able to control. People like to think they can escape this, that maybe somehow they'll be the exception, that they'll get lucky, that things will just work out. But luck isn't a strategy. Hoping things will change doesn't make them change. The only way forward is through effort, through discipline, through paying the price willingly, before life forces you to pay it in ways you'll regret. Life will always demand a price, and there is no escaping that reality. You either pay it through effort, discipline, and sacrifice, or you pay it through suffering, regret, and weakness. Believing in yourself isn't just about thoughts or motivation, it's about action, about proving to yourself every day that you are someone worth trusting. Consistency is the foundation of that belief, because without it, talent and intelligence mean nothing. Ignoring responsibility may feel easy in the moment, but it only leads to deeper suffering down the road. The choice is always yours. You can either take control of your life now or wait until life forces control upon you. And by then, it may be too late.